Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. I had to really be careful to make sure I got that date right. It's a historic date. It could be a historic date. I don't know whether we'll, by the end of the day, we'll rue the, I don't know, I guess we'll rue the day, which would be today. Tomorrow we'll rue today, which will be yesterday at that point. I don't know. January 16th, 2018. Not particularly important. Just for some reason, I was having difficulty getting the date out correctly and trying to remember not to say 2017. I haven't made that mistake yet, but it's only a matter of time. No one writes checks anymore, so I suppose this is where I will make that mistake instead. Better night's sleep last night for those of you who are checking up on me, and the cold kind of still lingering in onset mode. We'll see how long we can last through the week and whether the crutches of Joan and Greg can get me through tomorrow and whether I can lean on Armando at any point to get some additional time. Maybe one or two of you. I should just schedule you guys in. You call in, host the show. I'll nod and cough. I'll cough approvingly every few seconds just to let you know that I'm still there. Still have not figured out the Skype issue, but as long as I can get the voice of the people I'm talking to, I consider that to be a win. It's really amazing. I feel bad about it just because I do occasionally get notes from listeners, sometimes longtime listeners, sometimes new listeners, excoriating me in some cases gently prodding, that I don't take. You know, I'm unprofessional in the maintenance of the equipment, and I gotta tell you, nothing changes in the setup. I try never to press any buttons unless there's something has gone way wrong, but I'm using software here that isn't entirely integrated yet. Not all of it is brand new, but a lot of it is sort of new. They're in new update modes, and they're pretty demanding. It's all pretty demanding stuff. Running on a computer that should be able to handle it. But remember, we've gone out and bought a new Mac Mini to try and handle all of these programs. And so far, it's been able to do so pretty well on the memory side. But every once in a while, something just goes haywire. I don't know what it is that changed Skype's settings. Of course, we did get a new set of headphones in here, but those plug into the back of the microphone, and the microphone never gets unplugged from the computer, so there really shouldn't be any issue. So I spent a little bit of the morning trying to figure this out. I don't know if any of you are like super Skype experts or think you might be able to figure out why Skype might not detect the presence of this microphone, and rather suddenly at that. I think that's what's going on. If it detected the microphone, I could choose it, and then when I chose it, I could click on the preferences, and I could mess around with the inputs and outputs, and that way I would be able to pipe my music reliably through the microphone, which would mean it would go into Skype, and then the people on the Skype call would be able to hear the music as well, but without having it recognize that the microphone is there, I can't pipe the music to it, and well, that makes things tough. But as long as we have the voice, I think we're in pretty good shape. Look at this, very interesting tweet this morning. Just thought that was totally inappropriate to share with everybody. Let's see who's tweeting this one. I don't know who. Michelle, who tweets as Invisible Pink NP. I have no idea what that might mean, but it doesn't matter. The message here is a side-by-side photos of Stormy Daniels, the porn star allegedly paid off by Michael Cohen on Donald Trump's behalf for her silence with regard to their sexual encounter following the golf tournament in Lake Tahoe in 2006, side by side with a photo of Ivanka Trump. And, they look remarkably similar. But then again, blonde hair and giant lips and lots of makeup, that's a popular look. Lots of people are into it for themselves and in others. And so it doesn't necessarily reveal anything in particular. It's just an interesting observation. And I'm willing to let Michelle make it, because I'm not going to stand there and tell women what they can and can't say. I don't know that I would necessarily be accused of misogyny for not retweeting a woman. I think that's probably beyond the pale at this point. You never know, though, and I want to be careful and consider all possibilities in the future. I want to be ready and ahead of the curve when, I don't know, the revolution comes. Anyway, it was an interesting observation. Surely anyone could have made it. Let's see. Yes, the Warlock with a good comment. Now, surely Daniel should be paying Trump for his silence. Probably true. I did see somebody tweet, you probably want to make sure that doesn't get out, because it could totally ruin your reputation as a sex star for people to find out. Yes, I think they may have that backwards. I agree with you, Warlock. Bill in Portland, Maine, I agree with you too. I think I'm just going to say that outright before reading today's morning tweet, and it will only confirm my convictions. And this Daily Kos Radio is live now. Kagro X, hello, that's me, is the only person saving America from collapse. Phew. So you best listen to what he has to say. Now here, I think that's a good start. I think you ought to. And I may or may not, in the end, save the Republic. We'll see whether I get around to it. There's a lot of news to catch up on. Of course, one thing occupying a little bit of time this morning on Twitter for me, news, sad news out of North Carolina, where apparently, as I did see it put by one of the Twitter feeds that I follow, well-regulated militia, who follows the gun issues, obviously, in case you didn't guess from the name, pointing out for us that there was an incident, I guess, overnight. Is this connected to a news story here or not? For some reason, this one's not directly connected to a news story, but a man accused, I guess the police were called with respect to a domestic abuse incident, and apparently he did not like this, and he has shot 4 cops and apparently also a police helicopter in the course of his crimes, and he has been shot but apparently not killed, amazingly enough, by the police there in northern South Carolina. But of course, this is not terrorism, because the man's name is Christian. However, had his name, it's a possible thing, had his name been Islam, or included the word Islam, or been Islamic in derivation, we would no doubt be tearing the place up talking about the terrorism. But his name is Christian, and Christians aren't terrorists, and therefore something. So there we are. Yeah, so here's the newspaper coverage of it and the tweet from well-regulated militia. He likes to put it this way. A member of our well-regulated militia has the police called on him for domestic violence, flees, shoots 4 cops while trying to evade them. That's not the best way to evade them. I don't think that lets them know exactly where you are. And yet he went and did this. NBC News in Washington offering us this coverage. Apparently it's a national story somewhere. Anyway, 4 officers shot following a domestic violence call in South Carolina. Officials are not releasing the names of the officers or the extent of their injuries at this time, Maria Chamberlain reports. 3 deputies and 1 officer, we're differentiating, that's important. I guess 3 county officials and 1 municipal officer, I don't know, were shot. I guess he could be a state policeman. While responding, that's usually trooper. I have too many comments. I'm ruining the story. 3 deputies and 1 officer were shot while responding to a domestic violence call in York, South Carolina, Monday night, authorities said. The suspect, 47-year-old Christian Thomas McCall, for those wondering, he's a white guy, fled following a domestic dispute, and canine units were released to track him. Around 10 p.m., shots were fired at the canine officer. Oh, I see. I shouldn't laugh. Pardon me. The dog's been shot, and that's sad, but that's the officer. That's funny. 3 deputies, they didn't want to say 4 deputies, one of whom is a dog, I guess. I guess we differentiate in that way. So a canine officer taken to the hospital, which is not insignificant, and it's no different, of course, than shooting a person. There's a live being involved here that shouldn't be shot at, and everyone feels empathy for dogs, even if you're not necessarily a dog person. Apparently, we don't have as much empathy for armadillos, deer, squirrels, and the like. But I guess the bigger and more exotic the animal, we're doing better at feeling empathy for them, though no better in hunting them anyway. So that's the deal. Shots fired at the canine officer. The canine officer, was taken to the hospital in a patrol car for treatment. The York County Sheriff's Office said 3 more officers, this time just officers, were shot after they continued the search for McCall. 2 officers were then flown to a local hospital. No word on whether those officers are also dogs. Officials did not immediately release the names of the officers or the extent of their injuries. Rex was shot in the forepaw. I don't really... Do they worry about releasing the name of the dog? Will we care about the name of the dog? I don't really know what to make of this. I mean, it's good reporting. There's nothing wrong with it. You got to report that the dog was shot. And you might as well elevate the dog. Why not? Thank you for your service, dog. Here's a Scooby snack. I don't know what to do with this shot police dog. It's bad, but that's odd to count them in the number of officers shot. I don't know. All right. I'm not sure how to treat that one. So, no points off for NBC there. I can't penalize them for that. McCall is believed to have assaulted a woman. He also sustained gunshot wounds and is now in custody. Trent Farris, public information officer for the York County Sheriff's Office, said the office is doing... It says the office. Really? The office is doing as good as can be, which makes sense. But I mean, how's the office? Or is that a typo? Like the officer, but there are 4 officers shot, 3 of whom had to go to the hospital. 1 of whom had to go to the veterinary hospital. But their main concern is for the 4 officers in the hospital. 4 officers. 4 officers in the hospital. Okay. It sounded like 3 more were shot. 2 were flown to a local hospital. 1 rode a unicycle to the local hospital. What is this? You know what? I am taking points away from this. This was, I'm sure, difficult circumstances, reporting from the field, trying to type up, whatever, but this needs to be cleaned up. So all 4 officers were shot. All 4 officers are in the hospital. 2 were flown to a people hospital. 1 was driven in a patrol car to a animal hospital. And 1 rode a unicycle or went through a Star Trek transporter beam to another hospital, which jointly treats, I don't know whether it's jointly veterinary and human. There's obviously a regular human hospital. I don't really know. I mean, I guess if you're going to start to offer that level of detail, I'd like you to finish it. What hospital did they go to? How did the other human officer, get to the hospital? Why wasn't it the same if it were flown to a local hospital? That's another question. Like, is it really faster to fly to a local hospital? I guess it could be. But the other guy wasn't hurt enough to fly him there? Or he went to a different hospital? Or did he ride his unicycle to a further distant hospital? I don't know why that information isn't there. Anyway, the more important information, obviously, is that Mr. Christian, I should start singing, Mr. Christian instead of sister. Mr. Christian is a white guy. I had to check on that. I was curious, of course, as to where this person had been radicalized and why moderate whites weren't reporting this guy. but apparently somebody reported this guy for domestic violence, and where the parents are and all of that. I'm just curious about, why, obviously, things that are said when, well, certainly when someone is involved in a shooting and they're black, they love to ask, where are the parents and all this. So why won't black people acknowledge black on black crime, et cetera, et cetera? If it's a Muslim, of course, what can we do about excluding the terrorists from their S-hole country from coming in here? But a white person named Christian, especially, automatically not terrorism. He's Christian, for God's sake. All right. Let's see. What other stories? Rebecca Romans recommends this piece here, shared by Eric Bollert on Twitter. And it is a feature over at shareblue.com, a joint project of, I don't know, a whole bunch of people who are basically also working at Media Matters, or used to be, or something. I don't know what ShareBlue actually is. I'm there all the time, but I should catch up on exactly what is their status, who works there, and why. But anyway, they're good people for the most part. I don't know all of them. I'm sure that those that I don't know are also good people, but it's a little bit more of a risk in saying that. I don't know for sure. One day I could be proven wrong. In this case, Tommy Christopher, who I think we all know from his past reporting for other media outlets, let's say like Fishbowl DC, is that where he got to start? And Mediaite, I know he writes there from time to time, maybe no longer. And now Share Blue. Constituents laugh out loud at GOP Senator Joni Ernst's defense of Trump. That must have been fun. She doesn't look amused in the photo, but I gather it's probably a stock or a file photo. She's not just grimacing because of this, but maybe it's from this event. I don't know. Donald Trump was already politically toxic to his party, but his racist rant last week is making things more uncomfortable for elected Republicans who have hidden from reporters but now have to face constituents. Senator Joni Ernst's experience, she's, of course, a Republican of Iowa. Her experience at her first constituent event of 2018, it's been a while, could be a prelude of things to come. In Red Oak, Iowa, on Sunday, Ernst was asked about Trump's recent comments about you-know-what countries. Yeah, I should remind everybody, S-word, S-hole countries. At the otherwise friendly Coffee with Joni event, constituent Barb Melson, go Barb, confronted Ernst about the damage that Trump is doing to our neighbors around the world with his white supremacy talk. Ernst insisted that Trump enjoys support from other world leaders. He is standing up for a lot of the countries, Ernst told the crowd. That's non-answer. Ernst was then asked to name a few. Her response, I can see why. Her response drew a big laugh from the crowd. Norway, Ernst replied unironically. Now that would be masterful comedy if she meant it. I mean, if she meant it ironically. Well, Norway, I mean, there is that. But I mean, did she really think that? And by the way, Norway, not only not a skill, it's not a few. It's one. Norway, of course, is the predominantly white country that Trump used as a contrast to the majority black nations he characterized as S-hole countries. Ernst isn't up for re-election until 2020, but the GOP is facing a wipeout in the House, and they stand a very good chance of losing control of the Senate in November. If Republicans are going to brave angry constituents in this climate, they're going to need better answers than Norway. I think you're right, senior writer Tommy Christopher. Yeah, that's right, senior writer. By the way, a former White House correspondent and politics reporter for AOL back in the day when they, I guess, did that stuff. The Daily Banter and Mediaite, we called that one correct. And a longtime liberal journalist and commentator, that's Tommy. And by the way, why not? He plugs himself in this, I'll plug him too. You can follow him on Twitter at Tommy X Topher. His name is Tommy Christopher. Tommy X Topher. Get it? He's putting the X in Xmas, and also in there instead of the word Christ. So people love that, I think. I don't really know why. Maybe, it's like, I'm sure that angers, does that not anger evangelical Christians at this point? Why don't you just write Christ? Well, it's longer characters. Well, now you have 280 characters in Twitter. Go ahead and put it there. But you don't have it in your name. I don't know. Just curious, sort of, about whether that bothers them. I like to keep track of such things and minimize the problems in life if I can. Or maximize problems for other people that I don't like. I'll admit to that. Why not? Okay, let's see. It's going to be a lot of throat clearing today. It's a tough day. So hopefully this cold never settles all the way in and I don't lose my voice. Let's catch up on other news of the day, and I'll try and keep a close eye on things to make sure we don't miss out on any commentary along the way via Twitter, and you can join in the conversation by tweeting me at KagroX, KAGROX on Twitter. You can also email, of course, although it's harder for me to keep up with the email during the show. And do use the KITM, Kagro in the morning hashtag to give yourself a better chance at being seen, both by myself and by other listeners to the show who also likewise will follow the KITM hashtag. I suggest that you do that. All right. Let's see. Warlock has another comment here too. Let's just check in on. Do I see the Las Vegas shooting influencing the Heller Senate race? It certainly could to some extent. What I see, I think, like all of us, is the Las Vegas shooting influencing nothing whatsoever. But if it's going to influence anything, it could influence the Heller Senate race and the congressional races there, depending perhaps on the stances people take about, let's say, with regard to bump stocks. I don't actually think that the bump stock ban would be ultimately a terribly effective piece of legislation, if only because they would probably try and they very quickly find a new way of bump firing semi-automatic weapons. I mean, the real problem is that semi-automatic weapons can be bump fired, as I explained to you, even without special equipment. And so I imagine it won't be too difficult to come up with something that circumvents the technical language of the ban, but still does the trick. But I don't mind trying to make them jump through hoops. And as a political weapon, I think it can be pretty effective. And if you're running for Senate or Congress, even in Nevada, in the wake of the Las Vegas shooting, and you're saying bump stocks, no big deal, everybody should have 10. That could be a problem. So I suppose it might be used effectively there. I wonder, though. I mean, it's a weird place. Las Vegas is a strange place, and a lot of the victims were from out of town, although the fact is that the attack took place there, and people will remember it. It's interesting. I think like survivors of the attack, or people who live in Las Vegas, who will count themselves survivors of the attack, even though they weren't at the concert, will occasionally use it as a I don't know what, a badge of honor of sorts. I survived it, or it happened in my town. But I don't know if it's producing the same feelings in Las Vegas or not. I mean, we got word at some point that they did, and that they referred to the events not as the Mandalay Bay shooting or the Las Vegas shooting, but as October 1, just the way we found was the case, say, in Newtown. Greg reminds us all the time that they don't refer to Sandy Hook so much as they do 12/14. But I wonder if it's felt the same way since so many of the victims were from out of town and out of state. It's just, it was a big tourist draw, and those victims went home. I don't know. We will see. Let's check in on a few other items. Oh, here's some more comments as well to share with people. Rebecca has another piece here. Oh, yes. That was a big piece of news yesterday, sort of. Apparently, Trump doesn't like the yellow and orange starburst. Do they look too healthy? That's a possibility. Apparently, Kevin McCarthy found out that, I guess, in observing Trump eating, happily munching. Can you munch on Starburst or chewy? happily scarfing Starburst candies. He liked the red and pink ones, which are nominally a sort of a cherry and strawberry flavor, and left behind the others. And apparently, so what else is there? Yellow and green, is that right? And anyway, he apparently put by the way, taxpayer-paid staffer to work preparing a gift for Trump of a package of only the Starburst colors that he likes. Did he expense the Starburst is the big question. And was taxpayer money used on purchasing and wasting useful, perfectly good Starburst on who? On nobody. Some bum who can't even sign tax cuts probably got to eat all those Starbursts. Hopefully he paid for it with campaign funds and was smart enough to do that. Well, not hopefully. I almost hope he did waste taxpayer money on it so that we could censure him for it. But since nothing would come of it and he'd remain in office, we might as well hope that he didn't waste our money on it, as well as all of our time. Anyhow, all right. Let's see. Good news from Bill. He says Devin Nunes down to a measly 5-point lead, according to PPP. Apparently some danger in California's 22nd district for massive liar and cheater Devin Nunes, the unmasking guy, as we called him yesterday. So he may be in some danger, as he well deserves. We'll check in perhaps a little bit more on that in the days to come. And let's see, I'll update you on a few more stories. I hope the music is coming through for those of you on the live stream. It did seem to come through on the podcast yesterday, so that makes me happy. We don't seem so horribly unprofessional all the way through. We'll be right back after this break to get more unprofessional. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Man, I hope that music is coming through. Otherwise, it sounds just so weird. All right, let's catch up on other things flying by via Twitter, as well as things I've put away less immediately, let's say, in Pocket. This Blake Hounshell all over my news feed today. Blake, the editor-in-chief, believe it or not, editor-in-chief of Politico magazine. I don't know why I say believe it or not. There's nothing wrong with, I don't know. I got nothing to say about Blake Hounshell. Maybe some of you do. He noting the NBC News tweet, which itself notes that this just in, unless the person who was typing a note to his friend Justin and just hit a space bar in there accidentally. Steve Bannon, remember him? He used to be briefly famous. Steve Bannon has arrived at the U.S. Capitol for a meeting, not necessarily interrogation, but a meeting with the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes' gang. So we'll see what that brings us. There's a little bit of video included there. Blake Hounshell noting for the record, Steve Bannon wearing apparently just one shirt for the appearance, although it appears he's in dress uniform. That would be the suit and tie sort of thing. So you can't see how many shirts he's got underneath because the collar is closed. I would imagine there's at least one T-shirt underneath that, and I guess that counts as two shirts in normal parlance, but one shirt visible. That's key. Thank you, Scott, for the note that the sound and audio and music is all fine. It's just Skype doesn't want to play the music over the phone, I guess, when we have guests on. So I'll have to alert them verbally to the upcoming breaks until we can figure this thing out. I really don't have any idea why it would detect no microphone and also no speakers. Of course, it won't detect the speakers because the speaker's output is the headset coming off of the microphone. So once the microphone is not recognized, I took it out. I plugged the USB thing into different ports. No dice. Too bad. All right, let's see. What other interesting Twitter feed stories caught my attention this morning? That's basically my morning roundup. Whatever I've retweeted in the morning is things of interest to me, and not all of it makes it into Pocket. So just for cleanup purposes, let's see. Matthew Chapman, also, one of the political writers at Share Blue, by the way. Might as well call them out. We'll do their full lineup later on. Matthew Chapman noting this story is just looking worse and worse. Missouri governor, what's his name? Eric? Is it Eric? Greitens? How does he pronounce that? Greitens. Yeah, as soon as you know you're in trouble, as soon as I learn to pronounce your name, you're either world famous or going to jail. Anyway, Greitens used state resources, people, to investigate that ex-mistress that he beat and blackmailed. And he did it on the same day the story of his misconduct went to print. This guy does not believe he's going down for this crime. He has included the tweet of Jana Elks, who tweets, by the way, as Omaha Gem Girl, all one word, because that's the way you got to do it, who notes that the Missouri state attorney has been accused of an ethically inappropriate investigation of Governor Greitens' blackmail victim. This, according to Raw Story, always worth checking in with Raw Story. Of course, the story here illustrated with a fun photo of Mr. SEAL Team Sicko over here with his AR-15 and doing the manly man, no finger on the trigger thing. It's one thing. Everybody, of course, should keep their fingers off the trigger, particularly when you're having your picture taken with a gun in your hand. But there's a particularly manly man way of doing it. The police and military training way, by sticking your trigger finger way out and resting it, right up on the bridge of the gun there, so that that's a good safety practice, no doubt. But they love having their picture taken, showing that. That shows that they've had military/police training. Anyway, the story over at Raw Story is this. The Missouri story at Raw Story is that the Missouri state paid attorney accused of ethically inappropriate investigation of the governor's blackmail victim. That's the headline. Who wrote this? Oh, yeah, it's up here up at the top. They put them in a funny place. Bob Brigham. Hi, Bob. Here you go. Missouri's Republican governor of... What? Okay. Bob. We see me after class. I'll read it to you verbatim. Missouri's Republican governor of Missouri. That's the way it works in Missouri. And I told you, you thought I was kidding. It was prescient. Just say Missouri a lot. Missouri State Paid Attorney, Missouri. Man, the story at Raw Stories about Missouri's Republican governor of Missouri, is alleged to have, that my own mistake there, alleged to have sent a state attorney from Missouri to investigate a woman, also from Missouri, only hours before KMOV TV in Missouri revealed a bombshell report accusing Governor of Missouri, Eric Greitens, I hope, of using revenge porn to blackmail a former mistress. The St. Louis, Missouri, Post-Dispatch reported Monday, Missouri. Nah, I'm going to skip it on that one. Yeah, okay. And by the way, yeah, it's a, I don't know. Does it count as revenge porn? I guess it sort of does. I hope there's no real, well, I guess there has to now be a legal category of it, since they've gone out of their way to try to criminalize revenge porn, which seems fair enough to me, I guess. But yeah, it seems to be. You really got to lean into that to get it, I think, to be revenge porn. I don't know, maybe not. Anyway, the whole idea, in case there's anybody who hadn't heard the story, is he took pictures, nude photos of this woman he was having an affair with to blackmail her to keep quiet about the affair. If you ever tell anyone, then I'll release these nude photos. It's kind of a weird situation in general. But okay, I mean, I guess it's not far enough removed from revenge porn, and I'm willing to exclude the term. I'll allow it, Bob. Just keep it to 1 Missouri per sentence from here on in. Lucinda Lutkemeyer, an attorney in the governor's office. That sounds like where have we heard that name before? Is there a member of Congress by that name? Is he from Missouri by any chance? I got to look that up now. I'm sorry. Hold on this is the way we read the news on this show, folks. Yeah, look at that. Blaine Lutkemeyer, U.S. Representative, Missouri's 3rd District. Holy macaroni. Let's take a look. Should we choose his Wikipedia entry or his bio to see if there is what was the name? Lucinda related to him? Is that what do you think? Wife? I mean, could be sister, daughter, who knows? Let's see. We'll scroll down in Wikipedia. Isn't there usually a personal life? There we are. Been married since 1976 to his wife, Jackie. They have 3 children, 1 granddaughter, so they're elder kids, I guess. Riley, the granddaughter Riley, 2 sons, Luke and Evan. Lutkemeyer is a member of the Knights of Columbus. Oh, my God. That seems normal enough. The rest of us doesn't tell. So who's Lucinda Lutkemeyer? Or are there lots of Lutkemeyers in Missouri? Got to say it twice. Or what? I wonder, is there any relation whatsoever? Well, that we could probably easily find out, but not without terribly disrupting the rest of the show. Maybe the rest of you could check in on that, or someone knows offhand. Okay, let's see. This does seem to be looking worse and worse. Lucinda Lutkemeyer, an attorney in the governor's office, for some strange reason, was recorded speaking with St. Louis attorney Albert Watkins, who was representing a client whose wife was married to the blackmail victim. I'm confused. Okay, Lucinda, who might be related to, what's his name? Blaine. Maybe not. She's an attorney in the governor's office. Recorded speaking with a private attorney, Albert Watkins, representing a client whose wife was married to the blackmail victim. What? No, I'm lost. Client whose wife was married, previously to the blackmail victim? The blackmail victim was a woman, yes, whose wife was married to the blackmail. Well, I am confused. I mean, was she previously in a same-sex marriage, or is she now? I'm a little confused about the relationships here. Can I just ask you this question, Al? Lutkemeyer inquired in the audio recording. I hope the question is, what the hell's going on here? Is your client talking to anyone in the media right now? Watkins said the recorded conversation occurred approximately 8 hours before the bombshell news. Governor Greitens has admitted the affair but denied blackmailing his former mistress. I found it chillingly disturbing. Okay, that she would make that call as a state-paid employee. So it's Lutkemeyer who's doing the talking here. I thought it was I thought it might be somebody else, like a state, attorney general or something like that. But I guess not. She is a state-paid attorney. So let's see. Watkins, the private lawyer for the client whose wife was married to the blackmail victim. Found it chillingly disturbing that she would make such a call, unless some action he has taken in regard to this matter while serving as governor is involved, and that would seem to raise even more political problems. It would seem ethically inappropriate to draw on public resources to defend himself. University of Missouri Columbia political science professor Periville Squire suggested. Real honest to God, that's his name, Periville Squire. Peveril. So I'm wrong about that. Honest to God, it's Peveril, not Periville. Peveril Squire. That is interesting. On Thursday, the St. Louis, Missouri, Post-Dispatch released the gut-wrenching audio detailing the allegations against the conservative governor. That I don't remember. My guts weren't wrenched, so okay. Also on Monday, Grayton's canceled his planned statewide tour to promote tax cuts. Grayton's has also been accused of slapping his mistress. The latest revelations may corroborate a pattern of physical intimidation by the governor, who is a former Navy SEAL from SEAL Team Sicko, as you know, who fired military weaponry in multiple campaign ads because rawr. The serious allegations against Missouri Governor Eric Greitens are very troubling, and also the need for, therapy and counseling. Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner wrote in a statement on Thursday, "After further consideration, I have decided to launch an investigation into the alleged actions of Governor Greitens. The governor will be back in the office after the holiday," which they misspelled using 2 L's, "weekend." Spokesman Parker Bryden told the Post-Dispatch Monday. What are they doing down there? So Blaine Luetkemeyer, what's his name? Peveril Squire and Parker Bryden. It's like miserable situation in Missouri down there. Can you get any whiter? The names these days. I mean, I thought I had it up to here with the Dakotas and Madisons and whatnot of the world, but man, Parker Bryden, Peveril Squire, or Parker Bryden. My God, I just turned into a loaf of Wonder Bread. Just saying that, it's killing me. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm trying not to judge. Yeah, if I don't have a radio show. Okay. Moving right along. Let's see. So I'm checking in on comments and whatnot. Everybody says the music is working. That is good news. Thank you, everyone. And let's see, where have we left off? I think we're up to date on the governor here. Wow, what a mess. I really want to figure out more about who is Lucinda Luetkemeyer. I wonder, is that like available on Google somewhere? How can I'm so curious. I want to search the two of them together now. Here, let's see. We'll put Lucinda in there, and then we'll put Blaine in there, and see if they come up in any searches together. Let's see. What do we got here? Yeah, here we are. Luetkemeyer for Senate 34, Missouri Scout. What's this about? I'm going to check some of this out. So just research along with me here. What do we got? Missouri MO Scouters. I don't know what Missouri Scout is. Missouri Scout is a private news service, for God's sake, it says, covering state politics. Subscribers receive daily updates. Okay, so, capital newsletter for lobbyists or whatever. And look at, there's a lot of Luetkemeyer. I guess they are all over the place in Missouri. A new committee has been formed, it says, by Anton Luetkemeyer to run for Senate District 34, where Senator Rob Schaff is termed, as it says here. That would be term limited, I suppose. Missouri Scouters were quick to explain to me, whoever me is, that Anton Luetkemeyer is Tony Luetkemeyer, cousin of Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer and husband, there we are, of Greitens' general counsel, Lucinda Luetkemeyer. One also mused that given how close Lucinda is to Todd Graves, Tony will most likely be the nominee. Representative Nick Marshall has also said he's running for the seat. This was back in May 16th. Probably, I can't really tell from this, but I guess May 16th, 2017. Can't really tell. The date is not clear on this, but that's pretty amazing. So let's see. Blaine is what? Cousin of Tony. Tony, who wants to run for state senate, we should check up on how he's doing with that, is married to Lucinda, and Lucinda is the Greitens lawyer who's in trouble in the BuzzFeed story. That solves mystery number one. Mystery number two. Mystery number one is still, what are the relationships between Al Watkins's client and the blackmailed woman? Was his ex-mistress the one who was blackmailed? It's possible maybe she too is political, and she's married to a political man, and the governor was threatening to blackmail her husband somehow with all of this. People are weird about these things. Is that what happened? Does anybody have any idea whatsoever? It was a crazy situation. Even before all of this nonsense, the story itself was crazy. But now that there's Lutkemeyers all over the place, it's like Lutkamania in Missouri. You can't stop these guys. That's really something. Now I'm curious. Why not? We'll just poke around a little bit more here. Is Tony Lutkemeyer? I probably should. Yeah, there he is. Okay, it comes up in the Google search. I was like, oh, I should have copied that name and pasted it because holy mackerel, I'm never going to get it right. Tony Lutkemeyer announces 2018 bid for Senate District 34 seat. He's got a LinkedIn profile. That's the headline that I read you was from the Missouri Times. There's a TonyForMissouri.com website that tells us a little bit about himself. Oh, I bet he'll have a picture of himself with his wife. I guess that could be his wife. One of them is a dog, and the other one is a woman. And I assume Tony is the bald guy in the photo here. So I will assume for our purposes that this is their family dog, and they own him, and they didn't rent him for the photo. The woman in the photo, she's at some distance. The dog is between them. She's reaching out. She's holding onto his elbow. It's not the closest photo I've ever seen, but photos like this are awkward. Can't tell anything about them from that. Let's see. Tony and his wife Lucinda, down at the bottom it says here, are residents of Parkville. They are active members of the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection. Tony is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, National Rifle Association, and Federalist Society. So fantastic guy. Tony enjoys traveling, watching sports, particularly his Mizzou Tigers, and spending time outdoors with his wife and their dog. That's nice. He takes them both for walks. You can see that in the photo right there. I got to say, she could have better shoes on for the walk, but it's up to her. I don't know if she was really out there walking for any great length of time. No, is there any discussion about about her work? I mean, this is his campaign staff, so they're not likely to have a whole bunch. But let's find out a little bit about Tony, by the way. He's running against career politicians. Just want you to know that. It says right here, Tony is running against career politicians who are seeking the state Senate as their next political stepping stone. Tony is not a politician. He is running to end politics as usual in Jefferson City. Of course, his cousin is a congressman. His wife is general counsel to the governor. And he also wants you to know, Tony, that he was born and raised in Missouri, fifth generation Missourian. He grew up in a small farming community and was proudly educated in the local public schools. That's good. His father, a career civil servant, no politics for these guys, in the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's, not political per se, but mom was a nurse, strong influences, yada, yada. University of Missouri in Columbia, elected to student body president. So he's not a politician. He just, is political. And while campaigning for office, I guess that office, that was where Tony met Lucinda, his wife. So I don't know. He sounds a little political for a guy who's not a politician. But okay, college president, that's nothing. During the summer after college, Tony worked as a White House intern, which is also not political, in the Domestic Policy Council, totally unpolitical, under President George W. Bush, who himself was not a politician. The expertise and commitment to public service displayed by White House staff showed Tony how bright, motivated individuals can shape public policy and make a meaningful difference at the highest levels of government. At the end of his summer in the nation's capital, Tony enrolled in the University of Missouri School of Law. While in law school, Tony was appointed by Missouri Governor Matt Blunt, totally not political, to serve on the University of Missouri Board of Curators, which almost all students get to do. governors very frequently reach down into the student body and at random appoint people to serve on the university's board of curators, people who are not political and haven't got a political bone in their body. That, of course, is the governing board for the UM system. In that role, Tony fought to keep tuition and fees low for Missouri students and families and served as a voting member on the committee to hire a new university president, totally non-political. After he graduated from law school, he clerked for a judge on the Missouri Supreme Court, for God's sake. Just straight to the Supreme Court because he's not a politician. Do you understand me? He's not seeking the state senate as his next political stepping stone. No, he's not a politician. He's running to end politics as usual in Jefferson City, where he's spent a great deal of his life, apparently, clerking for the Missouri Supreme Court. As a constitutional conservative, you need to know that about him, Tony understands the importance of limited government and limited time spent serving in it, and the individual rights protected by the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights, which is a totally different thing. Whatever. All right. Well, that's pretty amazing that all of this would happen. By the way, I did say he had a LinkedIn profile. Let's see if we can take a look at that and see how non-political he is when he's looking for a job. He is currently senior counsel at Americo Life Incorporated, as a matter of fact. I don't know what that is, but maybe it's not particularly political. An associate at Shook, Hardy and Bacon, actually a firm I've heard of, so that tells us it's probably a pretty large firm. Law clerk at the Supreme Court of Missouri. Before that, adjunct professor of law at the University of Missouri. Well, it's listed as before that, but I guess that would be interesting. Boy, I guess it's a part-time job clerking at the Supreme Court of Missouri, because he was a clerk from August 2009 to August 2011, which he counts as, 2 years and 3 months. That really 1 month. That's really 2 years, but okay. But during that time, from January 2011 to May of 2011, that's 5 months, he counts experience as adjunct professor of law at the University of Missouri at Columbia. Now, for all of that time, he was also clerking at the Supreme Court, and I guess just staying up around the clock and teaching law at the same time. It's good. It's good adjunct job, I guess. I just didn't think that would happen. Law clerks at the Supreme Court, usually a full-time gig. And then, of course, student curator of the University of Missouri system. That also is listed. No other indications of other political jobs there. So either that has been sanitized to some extent, or maybe that's the full extent of his resume, and he wants to be a state senator now. Totally not using it as a stepping stone, though. Want you to know that for sure. Cousin is a congressman, yada, yada. Interesting what you can find out by reading the newspaper together, isn't it? That's what I like about the show. I hope it's entertaining to you, too. It's not enough just to read the articles. I have questions. And if you don't, you're probably too busy. You probably do have questions. You're just too busy to ask those questions. I do it for you. I think that's the best way to read the news and give yourself the best context. Now we know that the governor is a weirdo and sicko and perv. We know all about that. But now we know that the people around him are kind of shady and questionable too, in various ways and to varying degrees. Let's see. We'll discuss the rest of that on Twitter, I'm sure, for the rest of the day. After the show, I get to blab about all this stuff that we found out and share it with others. Let's see. What else have I pulled up here by way of fun stories? Okay, there's the... Blake Hounshell, who I had mentioned was all over my feed this morning, also has this tweet from CBS This Morning, in which the new... what is she? HHS? Not HHS. Department of Homeland Security. DHS Secretary Kirsten Nielsen, who spells it with a J in the middle of there because something Norway, or I don't know. I guess she's clearly very Nordic, and she's blonde, so Trump liked her and put her in the job. She may also be, extraordinarily knowledgeable. I have not seen it yet, but I'm usually not willing to give the benefit of the doubt on smarts to Trump appointees, no matter who they are. But perhaps I'm being unfair. But Kirsten, I like that. It's a very interesting and exotic spelling with the J in there. Kirsten Nielsen, apparently on DACA deportations, she had this to say: it's not going to be a priority of ICE, the Immigration Service, of ICE to prioritize their removal. I've said that before. That's not the policy of DHS. That, according to a story reported by CBS, Blake Hounshill Riley making the comment, "Congratulations, you just invented DACA." That's right. First comment in the thread here in response from Rick Collins, who says someone should copy and paste the DACA language, change the title to the Manly Protection of America Act, give it to Trump, and we can all go home. I think that's very likely true. And the point, of course, being that, it's doublespeak in a way, I guess. And she may just be lying in the end, and deporting them may in fact be an ICE priority, and she's just saying it isn't. But if it really wasn't, then yeah, you'd be right back at DACA all over again. That brings us, well, of course, first to our top of the hour break, which is an amazing thing. We've talked our way through an hour of the show already. At least I have. You may have fallen asleep. But that brings us to, after the break, the point at which we should catch up on the major newspaper type reporting on what the hell happened, after all, at the S-hole meeting. What led up to it? Why did it collapse that way? Why did he lapse into the foul language? What's the fallout, et cetera, et cetera? But Robert Costa, I think, reporting for the Washington Post, along with others on the crack staff there, getting the background, filling in the blanks, telling us it was pretty much just as we imagined it, but we'll fill you all in on it after the break. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here after our short break here on Netroots Radio. We were on Netroots Radio before the short break as well, but just to clarify. Let's see. I just saw a picture of a file photo of Trump boarding Air Force One. Did he come back last night, or is he still there this morning? I suppose that's entirely possible, but not sure. Let's see. Is Paul Krugman grousing about the same thing I'm about to grouse about? Let's see. He says two members of the world's greatest deliberative body, that would be the United States Senate, in case you've forgotten, claim that the president of the world's greatest nation, that's us, isn't a racist because he said, S-house, not S-hole. This descent of the GOP is now beyond parody. But that's only 49 minutes ago. Why did it take you that long to come around to that conclusion, Paul Krugman? I am confused still. The best explanation I've been given as to why that's a big deal or why it's being discussed is, it's a distraction. It's a way to make the fight about the language used and to roll your eyes at somebody's surprised that somebody would use profanity, etc., and dismiss it that way. I've also seen people say, Joe Biden said big effing deal. You remember that? And we discussed that last week. Yeah, one was an exclamation with regard to the good that was being done, whereas this is an exclamation about the evil that's going to be done and the evil with which he regards, the hatred with which he regards the rest of the world. There is that. I guess that's it, but I mean, really, honestly, I guess I don't understand it. Nobody understands it from the perspective of, well, how is that any better? Why would you insist that it was one thing or the other? And I guess it's just a magazine clip sort of thing. Well, you got the quote wrong, so you can't be trusted on anything else either. I don't know. Let's see. Out in Pocket, I had put together, or I had collected, as I told you, Robert Costa's latest, I think, for the Washington Post. His work, anyway, from yesterday, along with Josh Dawsey and Ashley Parker, entitled Inside the Tense, Profane White House Meeting on Immigration. And, let's just get right into it. When President Trump spoke by phone with Senator Richard J. Durbin around 10:15 a.m. last Thursday, he expressed pleasure with Durbin's outline of a bipartisan immigration pact and praised the high-ranking Illinois Democrats' efforts, according to the White House officials, some White House officials, and congressional aides. You got that? 10:15 a.m. last Thursday. Durbin calls him. We got the outlines of a deal. He says, great. I love what you've done. I love how hard you worked on this. Whatever, however he phrases it. They're praise for Durbin and the compromise. The president then asked if Senator Lindsey Graham, his one-time foe turned ally, was on board, which Durbin affirmed. Trump invited the lawmakers to visit with him at noon, the people familiar with the call said. So 10:15, great, fantastic, I love it. Is Graham on board? Yes, terrific. Come to the White House at noon. I want to see you for lunch. We'll talk. That's 2 hours, less than 2 hours away. Hour and 45 minutes. But when they arrived at the Oval Office, the two senators were surprised to find that Trump was far from ready to finalize the agreement. He was fired up and surrounded by hardline conservatives, such as Senators, you'll recognize from the last couple of days of news, Tom Cotton of Arkansas, who seemed confident that the president was now aligned with them, according to one person with knowledge of the meeting. Trump told the group he wasn't interested in the terms of the bipartisan deal that Durbin and Graham had been putting together, which he had praised an hour and 45 minutes earlier. And as he shrugged off suggestions from Durbin and others, the president called nations from Africa S-hole countries, denigrated Haiti, and grew angry. The meeting was short, tense, and often dominated by loud crosstalk and swearing, according to Republicans and Democrats familiar with the meeting. Trump's ping-ponging, really politely put, I think, Trump's flip-flopping, from deal-making to feuding, from elation to fury, has come to define the contentious immigration talks between the White House and Congress. And P.S. has come to prove Wolf's book and every other supposition that we've made and empirical observation that we've made of Trump since day one. In other words, everyone who complains about him being mercurial and crazy is absolutely right. Trump's ping-ponging, blah, 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 elation to fury, has come to define the contentious everything talks between the White Hole and Congress. Perplexing members, we're all perplexed. Perplexing members of both parties as they navigate the president's vulgarities, his combativeness, and his willingness to suddenly change his position. Ooh, I'm for chaos. The blow-up has derailed those negotiations yet again and increased the possibility of a government shutdown, we're like 4 days away now, over the fate of hundreds of thousands of young undocumented immigrants known as dreamers. No, say DACA. It's different. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Shut the F up for just a second here. But let me just linger on this for one more second here. The combativeness, willingness to suddenly change his position. I know, he's a chaos agent. It's true and all that. But I'm less convinced every second that he thinks what I'll do is I'll throw him a curveball because I'm a chaos agent. And the reality is I don't know what I said several minutes ago. I have no memory of it. Besides which, I really could use a Snickers right now, and I'm turning into a diva. And I'm going to reverse my position, not for strategic reasons, but because I'm a lunatic. Now, somebody told me several years ago when I was writing a book about the art of the deal and how to be a billionaire, they said to me, Mr. Trump, you're an insane a-hole. You keep changing your mind every second. I sometimes think you're not mentally competent. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm writing the book. I'm your ghostwriter. I'm going to say you're mercurial. You're a chaos agent. You love to throw people curveballs to keep them on their toes. Isn't that it? Yeah, toes. I said, I love toes. Dick Morris introduced me to toes. Fantastic things. And 10 of them on every person, if you can believe it. Sometimes less, sometimes more if you get really lucky. But anyway, I imagine that somebody talked him into thinking that was a strategy, and that therefore it was okay. And he's never had to live like an impoverished person. It's always been a hustle to maintain the illusion that he's actually rich, of course. But, I guess in a sense, this is all worked out for him. This is real life to him. He never has had the option to relax and actually be rich and not worry about having to hustle until now, really. And, so I don't imagine it ever occurred to him like, this is no way to live. I don't really have this wealth and I should just admit it and I don't have to lie about everything. And maybe I could have some inner peace at some point with just, acknowledging I have less money than I want people to think. But that never occurred to him. So he always thinks this is a recipe for success. I win my negotiations. And when he loses his negotiations, his people are paid to tell him he won negotiations. And he's never had to count his money or account to anybody for wins or losses because it's all privately held. If it was a publicly held company, he would have been voted out as CEO or whatever, president a long time ago for losing money. But he doesn't have to put up with that. So to him, throwing curveballs is a winning strategy. I've never been killed for doing it. So therefore it's a success. And anytime I want, if I want to play golf, I can do it. So shut up. So it's a win. This account of events, to return to the article, surrounding Thursday's explosive meeting is based on interviews with more than a dozen White House or Whitehall officials, Capitol Hill aides, and lawmakers. So now we know that at least, what their sourcing is. But you see what's happened here is this is being offered up as an explanation, I guess, for the tense negotiations and whether or not he said S-hole or S-house, or whatever that's supposed to mean, whatever we're supposed to take from it. But once again, like I said, this confirms everything that we know about him. And this again illustrates that Trump is subject to making public policy or making his positions on public policy subject to the last person he speaks to. 10:15 a.m. Hello, Senator Durbin. What do you got for me? We have this terrific deal, Mr. President. It's going to make you happy. You're going to be able to sign a DACA bill. Terrific. I'm going to look like such an effective leader. Come to the White House for lunch. Let's talk it over and finalize the deal. Fine, we will do that. And then, too late, because by the time he gets there, the White House, and presumably what has happened here, and maybe the reporting will tell us, conservatives in the White House have gotten to the president. Maybe they heard about the phone call. Mr. President, well, that was Dick Durbin. What did he say? He says they've got a deal. Lindsey Graham is on board. They're coming for lunch. We're going to sign the whole thing. We're going to get it all worked out. Oh, my God, you can't do that. Why not? Because we have to throw minorities out and persecute poor people. Oh, yeah, right. I forgot about that. What are you suggesting? I suggest you trash the whole deal. Your conservative base wants you to brutalize people. Remember that we're for that. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm so angry now. You've made me so furious. I'm furious with that Durbin character. I invited him here for lunch. Poison his lunch. Well, you can't go that far. I reverse that order. Fine. Poison my lunch. I'm sick of this whole place. But by the time they arrive, now he's totally anti their deal because the last person he talked to was Tom Cotton. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's barely an adult human being. He should be in diapers. Gotta believe that this guy is finished mentally as an adult. Get him out of there already. Get that son of a bitch off the field, I would say, if I were him. And then I would forget it a minute later. So where were we? The account of events. Yes, they talked to people in the White House and Capitol Hill, aides and lawmakers. Here's what we got. The fight has left congressional leaders unsure of whether they will eventually come to an agreement. Of course. Again, treading too lightly. The fight has revealed to congressional leaders that they are unsure whether there's a adult mentally stable enough to come to an agreement with on anything, on any subject for more than 2 seconds in the Whitehall. Because you'll get a deal, you'll leave, and somebody who hates the deal will say, you hate that deal. I hate that deal. Those aren't the droids you're looking for. Those weren't the droids I was looking for. And the deal will be off. The fight has left congressional leaders unsure if there's a president. That's the reality. Now back to their pleasant language, some remain optimistic that Trump can be walked back to the political center and will cut a deal that expands border security while protecting those under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, program, which Trump has ordered ended. The president is indispensable to getting a deal, Graham said in an interview. Time will tell. He's not indispensable to getting a deal. He's an impediment to getting a deal. You won't have a deal unless he's removed from it, but you need him as political cover. What you want is to make a deal, to have the president approve it, and then seal him in a Ziploc bag and send him to the golf course and let him out only to play golf and then put him back in. And don't let anyone onto the golf course. If Tom Cotton or Stephen Miller get to him, your deal is dead. What you need to do is put him in a Ziploc bag, move him to the golf course, put them in Ziploc bags, or better yet, in a burlap sack and throw them in the river. Tom Cotton, Stephen Miller, 2 cats in a bag, toss them in the Potomac. Then you'll have a deal. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not worth it. I'm not advocating that we do such things. But if you want it, if getting a deal in place is what you're after, and I'm not saying it is, but if it is, then you'll want to put them in a burlap sack and throw them in the river. It doesn't have to be the Potomac. It could be the Anacostia. That's fine. Perhaps better for our purposes, I think. It doesn't even have to be a free-flowing body of water. To be honest, it could be an artificial lake at a golf course. Just make sure it's not the same one that Trump is at, lest they escape. Also, put some snakes in the bag, I guess. I don't want to be cruel to the snakes. Make them water moccasins so that they can live if they can finally chew their way out of the bag when they're done. But they should get some bites while they're in there, I think. Anyway, continuing with the article. Last Thursday was a critical moment in the stalled negotiations, revealing the president's priorities. Yeah, right. Even as the discussion fell apart. Illustrated here, by the way, with a video, the freeze frame of which is Trump with his trademark 8,000-year-old man, droopy blobfish scowl on, eyes closed because he's uninterested in everything, and arms crossed because I don't want to hear anything. Give me a Twinkie. When can I golf? Trump complained that there wasn't enough money included in the deal for his promised wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. He also objected that Democratic proposals to adjust the visa lottery and federal policy for immigrants with temporary protected status were going to drive more people from countries he deemed undesirable, assholes, into the United States instead of attracting immigrants from places like Norway. Oh, and Asia. That's nice. I like Asians. Have you seen Asian girls? I've seen a lot of websites about Asian girls. They're really nice. People familiar with the meeting said attendees who were alarmed by the racial undertones of Trump's remarks were further disturbed when the topic of the Congressional Black Caucus, or CBC, came up. These people said at one point, Durbin told the president, this is why it came up, that members of that caucus, an influential House group, would be more likely. By the way, I mean, I guess are they all white writers in this? I mean, it's true that they're an influential House group, and you got to say so. It just feels like, yeah, the Congressional Black Caucus. You don't really need to explain what that is and why it's important to pay attention to black lawmakers in this country. It's because, one, they're lawmakers, and two, yeah, they represent a sizable constituency that is traditionally underrepresented in Congress and in lawmaking, but is at the moment, represents a very significant portion of the people affected directly by this legislation. But I can't fault them for saying that. It's just annoying that you have to remind people, like, what is the CBC? Anyway, they would be more likely to agree to a deal if certain countries were included in the proposed protections, according to people familiar with the meeting. Trump was curt and dismissive, saying he was not making immigration policy to cater to the CBC and did not particularly care about that bloc's demands, according to the people briefed on the meeting. You've got to be joking, one advisor said, describing Trump's reaction. I'm not certain exactly what that means. Like, is he saying that Trump's reaction was basically, you've got to be joking to bring up the CBC, or what? I guess that's what that is supposed to mean. I have another interpretation or two, but I think that's what they're getting at. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly was in the room and was largely stone-faced, thanks a lot for your help, not giving any visible reaction when Trump said S-hole countries or when he said Haitians should not be part of any deal. White House White-hole advisors said, thanks for your help there, Mr. Kelly. At one point, Graham told Trump he should use different language to discuss immigration. People briefed on the meeting said, I heard he gave him holy hell, but apparently not. He said, you should use different language. As Trump battled back the Democrats, he was urged on by Republican lawmakers. Representative Bob Goodlatte of Virginia told Graham and Durbin their proposal would not fly, and he told the group they should instead embrace his more conservative bill. Durbin was not interested, White House officials said. After Graham left, he told associates that he was disturbed by what he heard in the Oval Office, according to people who spoke with him, and that it was evident that the deal's antagonists had gotten to Trump. Graham and Durbin also told allies that they were stunned that the other lawmakers were present at all, I guess, and that Trump's tone seemed so different than it had been days or even hours before, according to people close to them. Graham declined to comment on the president's reported obscenity. He has told others in his circle that commenting would only hurt the chance of a deal, and that he wants to keep a relationship with the president. He likes playing golf with him. Well, F that, Lindsay. There had initially been hope for the Thursday meeting. Trump had told the lawmakers during a partially televised session 2 days earlier that he was flexible. You remember that? I'll sign it, he said Tuesday, of whatever bill was brought to him. He even said he would be willing to lock the door of the cabinet room if they wanted to negotiate at the White-hole, according to people who heard his comments. Trump went on to say at the earlier meeting that he wanted a deal and that even those in the conservative House Freedom Caucus should work with Durbin. In the hours and days afterward, a bipartisan group of senators, Graham, Durbin, Jeff Flake of Arizona, Bob Menendez of New Jersey, Michael Bennet, and Cory Gardner, Democrat and Republican, respectively, of Colorado, began meeting and broadly agreed to a proposal. Oh, we should work together? Fine, we will. Okay, we did. All right, I like your deal. Come to lunch. I hate your deal. S-holes. See? That's what happened. But some White House officials, including conservative advisor Stephen Miller, feared that Graham and Durbin would try to trick Trump into signing a bill that was damaging to him and would hurt him with his political base. Then you should never have allowed the president to go to that meeting 2 days earlier and say he would sign whatever you give him. And that must have infuriated Miller. As word trickled out Thursday morning on Capitol Hill that Durbin and Graham were heading over to the White House, Legislative Affairs Director Mark Short began to make calls to lawmakers and shared many of Miller's concerns. Hi, I'm calling on behalf of a racist, Stephen Miller. If you're racist, please race over to the White-hole and convince the president that he hates this deal before Durbin and Graham get there for lunch. That's what happened. Soon, Goodlatte, one of the more conservative House members on immigration, was headed to the White House. Trump also called House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy and asked him to come. That's where I think he figured out that Trump's likes those only the two colors of Starburst. Senators David Perdue of Georgia and Cotton were also invited to rush over. They rushed on over and wrecked it some more. Zappa reference, if you get it. In the late morning, before Durbin and Graham arrived, Kelly, who had already been briefed on the deal, talked to Trump to tell him that the proposal would probably not be good for his agenda, White House officials said. Kelly, a former Secretary of Homeland Security, has taken an increasingly aggressive and influential role in the immigration negotiations, calling lawmakers and meeting with the White House aides daily, more than he has on other topics. He has very strong feelings, in the words of one official, but he's not a lone voice. Trump in recent weeks has also been talking to more conservatives, such as Representative Mark Meadows of North Carolina, on immigration, these people said. So he has lots of strong opinions. So he's a racist, too, and he's been talking to other racists. I like the reference to, by the way, he's a former Secretary of Homeland Security, so he has a special interest in this. He was Secretary of Homeland Security for like 6 hours and got moved to White House Chief of Staff. White House officials say Kelly is determined to secure a deal on Dreamers and border security and has told Trump that the southwestern border is worse than it was a few years ago and that he can be the president to change the status quo. He tells him what he wants to hear. Once we saw what was going on in the meeting a few days earlier, we were freaked out, said immigration hardliner Mark Krikorian, who runs the Center for Immigration Studies. Trump, he said, has hawkish instincts on immigration, but they aren't well developed. None of his ideas are well developed. And he hasn't ever been through these kinds of legislative fights. After the Thursday meeting, Trump began telling allies that the proposal was, quote, a terrible deal for me, of course. It has to be about him, according to the friends he spoke with, and that Kelly and other aides in confidence were correct in advising him to back away. It wasn't a serious proposal. It was not viewed as a serious proposal because it did so little to address the immigration issues that the president has been vocal about, said Meadows, who leads the conservative House Freedom Caucus. If I had to put it on a 1 to 10 range, with 10 being the most conservative and 1 being the most liberal, I would give it a 2.5. Trump was not particularly upset by the coverage of the meeting and his vulgarity after it was first reported by the Washington Post, calling friends and asking how they expected it to play with his political supporters, aides said. Everyone was saying it would help him with the base, which would agree with his characterization. Gee whiz, amazing that they all said what would agree with his characterization. That's astonishing. By Thursday evening, many White House aides were concerned that the story was exploding beyond the usual level for a Trump controversy, which is to say, hair on fire, dumpster fire all the time. But they carried on with their plans for the night, which were sending off a send-off party for Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell, a former Goldman Sachs executive, thank you for noting that, an ally of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Nearly every top official ducked into the exclusive Italian restaurant Cafe Milano in Georgetown to toast Powell. There was little effort to significantly push back on the story that night because aides knew that Trump had said it and that the president wasn't even too upset, according to people involved in the talks. But of course, 2 senators are busy lying about it. Then Friday morning, Trump appeared to suggest in a tweet that he had not used the objectionable word at all. The language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not the language used. Yes, it was. That confirms it. He said it wasn't. 3 White House officials said Perdue and Cotton told the White House that they heard S house rather than S hole, allowing them to deny the president's comments on television over the weekend. That is the worst possible loophole. The 2 men initially said publicly that they could not recall what the president said. Then, of course, they did, and it was totally different, except it wasn't different at all. Representatives for both men declined to comment. Men. Going forward, a path to an immigration deal remains hazy. The article now concludes, I expect that we'll get more Republican support for the proposal because it's really the only game in town. I suspect there will be more negotiations. We didn't write the Bible, Graham said on Monday. We wrote a proposal that over time we can make it better. Meadows said he and Goodlatte were working to add a merit-based immigration policy to their conservative version. He said a majority of Republicans were not going to line up behind Graham and Durbin and should rally instead behind his proposal, which is unlikely to win support from Democrats. Based on what they proposed originally, Durbin and Graham are running a marathon, and they're only on mile 2, Meadows said, except eventually you finish marathons, so that's not really a very good comparison. So that's what we learned about what went on at the meeting and how easily led by the nose Donald Trump really is. Master negotiator. You know, I'm really great at this. What a garbage human being. Okay, well, we're nearly ready for our third break. But, well, let's see. Plenty more to share after the break. Let's see. Are there any other stories that I have opened with the idea of sharing them later on? Yes, there are a few. Let's see how the comment section is going here as we prepare for our next break. Brian, Canadian pundit, says putting Cotton and Miller in the Potomac would be the equivalent of putting toxic waste into a body of water, polluting the water for decades. See Chernobyl. Well, that's likely true, but I still think on balance, consider the trash it would wash away from our shores. and the problems it would save us elsewhere. Besides which, I do think that we can probably recover the contaminants from the water. Maybe we could recycle them in some way. It's a possibility. Warlock has a suggestion for a story for us to pick up. Jingy chiming in here. No difference for him between the two S words being used. I don't know why anybody would think that there were. And more suggestions from Kate Sherrill. So lots to catch up on. After our next break, we'll be back in 2 minutes. Having sorted some of that stuff out, find you some good, solid stories to end the day with. Just being Tuesday, we got a lot ahead of us. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Dang, I couldn't get that button working again. Okay. And I was getting a grooving to the music, too, as well. And enjoying the news that Donald Trump is planning for 2 new nuclear weapons. I saw Scout Finch, Jen Hayden, tweeting that one around. And, so I thought I might check in on that story. And I lost track of time and was grooving to the music. We're back with the Kagro in the Morning Show, by the way, here on Netroots Radio, in case you happened to be wandering past the computer and just clicked on a button and had no idea what you would be listening to. Might as well tell you. What's the news on the new nuclear weapons? My guess is that it's too much work involved in developing a new nuclear weapon. I figured they would just spray paint old ones gold, and if they could add some sort of chemical agent so that the mushroom cloud was orange, he might approve of the thing. The bigly, believe me, nuclear weapons. Max Greenwood reporting for The Hill in this case. I guess the news came from the Wall Street Journal. What's the deal? A low-yield warhead nuclear weapon that would be used on a Trident missile, a submarine-launched nuclear missile. Pentagon also planning to develop a new nuclear-armed cruise missile that would be deployed at sea as well. The plan would reintroduce a system to the U.S. nuclear arsenal that was retired in 2010. What exactly is the deal? Not sure. Anyway, it doesn't sound like it's huge news at this point. Nothing innovative, but I'm sure if the Navy were interested in revamping its nuclear arsenal, some presidents might stand in the way and say we really just don't need to spend money on things like that. Trump, I'm sure, wants to jump out of their way, allow him to do whatever he wants. And if it's a strong-sounding weapon, he can take pride in having freed the Navy to share it with the world. Let's see. As I mentioned before the break, lots of suggestions for new items to pick up. And let's see. We have the one that Warlock mentioned. Did ask me, did I see this as a entry at the at Daily? Because I guess it's been up on the front page now. Scout Finch again. Jen Hayden with this one. Senator Schumer needles the tweeter-in-chief with a video mocking Trump's cabinet meeting. I have not seen this. Interesting photo illustrating the piece. It's Schumer and Mitch McConnell speaking with Donald Trump, who's making the cuckoo lips that he usually... It's amazing how often he is photographed with his mouth in that position. It's not like he walks around saying ooh, 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 ooh all the time like a chimpanzee. I don't really understand why he's so frequently photographed like that. But, I mean, it's a beautiful example because he's photographed from the side, so you really see the lips protruding. Also, the eyebrows and the ludicrous hair. He's a grotesque-looking human being. I don't know what to tell you. Schumer doesn't look all that good in this photo, by the way, either. Some strange lighting on his face that makes it look like, I don't know, maybe he was caught in the blast of one of the Bigly Believe Me bombs. His face is about 1/3 orange and 2/3 pale white. Weird lighting on his face. He's got a shadow on there. So what's the story here? This morning, Donald Trump hosted his first full cabinet meeting. When was this from? This is June of 2017 somehow. Did I see it? I didn't, but it was from June. So I don't know. Is that particularly of interest? Trump first hosted his first full cabinet meeting in a bizarre and unprecedented move. Trump assembled his squad and went around the room. Remember when they all took turns praising Donald Trump to the cameras? And there was particularly cringeworthy praise, Jen says, from Reince Priebus. He's gone, of course. And then later on, Chuck Schumer and his staff released a video that was, I guess, them going around the table and praising Chuck Schumer. I don't know. We'll have to take a look at that. I hadn't seen it when it happened, but perhaps I'll have to circle back and, well, I'll share it with all of you in case you missed it too. Thanks for bringing it up. Let's see. Other items that were raised for discussion. Kate Sherrill had sent me the news tweeted by Andy Slavitt that after declining from 18% to 11% in 3 years, the uninsured rate has risen again in 2017 for the first time since 2013, the enactment of the Affordable Care Act, of course, being responsible for bringing it down from 18 to 11%. Back on the way up thanks to Trump's sabotage of the act. Well worth noting. So let's make sure we have that available for you. And also another suggestion, Trump's DOJ, Department of Justice, manipulates statistics on terrorism. Let's see. Matthew Miller tweeting this. This report includes people who committed terrorist acts overseas, were arrested overseas, and brought here to face trial. That's some definition of immigrant. Oh, I see. The report is trying to show crimes committed by immigrants. I think if you're arrested overseas and brought here for trial, that doesn't really necessarily make you an immigrant. Good point, though. Well worth noting among the other stories. Let's see. Other things that I had opened up and put aside for discussion. Bloomberg Politics having a good time this morning, or people having a good time this morning with an old story. Got an incoming call here. Who's going? Hey, Armando. Okay, let's bring him in. Good morning, Armando. How you doing?
I happened to be reading that report, so I thought I could add a little bit to your show here.
Which one? The uninsured rate or the
terrorism report?
Terrorism report. Okay, great.
Justice Department.
There's
a few things that I just tweeted about. They talked about in 2017 there were 2,554 detainees that they claim were terrorism related. But if you look at the report, only 335 of these 2,554 were people trying to enter the country by land.
Oh, okay. That's
not
a lot.
The wall, think about the wall. The wall would not address, let's assume, for the sake of argument, all 335, and it's not true, I'm sure, that all 335 were trying to enter via Mexico. Yeah. And you had a perfect wall. So you would stop about 10% of the threat.
Yeah, right.
At a cost of $18 billion, when there's clearly better ways to spend $18 billion to make us safer. Yeah. So it's just almost insanity. The other thing that was noteworthy, again, even these numbers are fudged, but the other proposals they have simply don't even address what this report identifies as the problem. Number one, it's family reunification policy in immigration law, what they call chain migration. It's if you're in and your husband's out, you can bring your husband in because we are, in theory, pro-family, right?
Yes.
That's family values.
Supposedly.
Well, suppose you said, well, family values clash with security, but they don't. There's nothing in this report that in any way indicates that chain migration creates a security threat. If it did, they'd highlight it. They'd be able to say 10% of the people who were national security threats or terror threats came in through chain migration. They didn't say that because it's not true. So chain migration really doesn't address what the report says is going on. And finally, the diversity lottery that Trump is so weird about. It's the weirdest thing that he's so fired up about this. And he lies about it constantly.
Yes.
It's a very thorough vetting process. But again, there's no indication that there is a disproportionate or even, frankly, any significant number of people who entered through the diversity lottery who turned out to be national terror threats. So the reality is, when you look at this report, and even though it's trumped up, it actually discredits Trump's proposals on these issues.
Yeah, he does do that a lot. He just he finds maybe one line in a report that sort of says something like what he wants, and usually there's a subordinate phrase later in the sentence that says, or gives you reason to doubt the conclusion he then draws from it, but he just edits that out. It's a very favorite trick of his. I mean, he does that all the
absolutely.
time.
No,
Does
absolutely.
it with polls.
Yeah, and I heard what you said, what Matt Miller was saying, and he's right in that terrorism is designed to apply to foreigners.
Yeah.
And indeed, when it applied to U.S. citizens, they only apply it to, generally speaking, to foreign, either someone like me who's a first generation citizen. I was born here, but my parents are immigrants. So if I committed a violent act, they could, I guess, call it terrorism or not. I don't know exactly how they decide these things. But if you're just a third-generation white person from North Carolina who's named Christian, and you shoot 4 officers, that's not a terrorist act.
No, because Christian.
But if it had been me, under their rubric, I might have been called a terrorist.
Yes, it probably has as much to do with your name as anything else. That's how they determine whether or not there's terrorism happening here. If your name sounds foreign, it's terrorism. And if it's indeterminate, like you say, okay, well, this name doesn't sound foreign. His name is Christian McCall or something like that. Well, then, of course, they say, well, call me if
give me a picture so I can determine whether it's terrorism or not.
Yes, right. Call me if he's black.
Yep. And again, it's clearly, this release, maybe it was scheduled today, but you saw the tweet from the Justice Department, right?
I didn't.
It's in all caps. It's hilarious.
You can't do that. No, I haven't seen that. Is it really? Okay, well, we'll have to look for it. Or maybe you can find it and send it. But
yeah, I will look for it now. It's so you can laugh at it.
Yes,
but
they should be more staid about these things.
Well, I think what's fascinating, of course, about it is it's a piece of propaganda released by the Justice Department. Here, I'm going to send this to you now. It's a copy link to tweet.
There we are.
I did. Now I will. I can't DM it to you. Want me to just retweet it?
Okay. Well, sure. You could do that, or you could put it in Skype.
The thing is, I'm doing it here. I'm just going to retweet it. How about that?
And I'll
copy you on it. How about that?
Okay.
Oh, there we go. We'll figure this out one of these days. Yes, it's in all caps. Let me just copy you on this. I'm going to direct it to your attention.
They all see it.
Anyway, you can read it. It has a link to the report. If you want to read the report, which is
it in all caps as well? The report?
No, it is not. But it is written. It is written rather all capsy. If you want to know the truth.
Okay.
It's written sort of all
Seems
caps.
like
It's a press release out of the Office of Public Affairs.
3 out of 4 individuals convicted of international terrorism and terrorism-related offenses were foreign-born, or rather, foreign-born, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea. And, of course, as we've detailed here, Cliven Bundy wasn't charged with terrorism.
Yeah, that's true, too. And also, I mean, even just without really digging too far into it, 3 out of 4 individuals convicted of international terrorism were international, is what you're saying. Okay,
Yes.
I know that. That's because they were foreign-born because it's international terrorism. Of course. To say otherwise would be to say that the United States is the leading exporter of terrorism, which some people actually claim is true, but it wouldn't be, for instance, the sort of thing that the Department of Justice would say. So, but
right.
Thanks for telling me. Foreign terrorists are foreign. Hello.
Right, and just to get to drill down, this is over a 16-year period. From 9/11 to December 2016.
Okay.
And interestingly, when you talk about convicted of international terrorism, it's what about Guantanamo? I don't know if they're including people in Guantanamo there or not, but
you mean as convicts?
Right. So it was 402 of the 549 were foreign-born. 254 were not U.S. citizens, i.e., they must have been on travel visas or something like that. Is the idea? This is over 16 years. 16 years. So the reality is, what it's telling you is over an average of what? I'm not great at the math, but it's probably 20 or 30 per year that we're talking about. And then they say 148 were foreign-born, naturalized, and received U.S. citizenship. 148 received it, foreign-born, nationalized. So, and then only 147 were native-born, and it's someone like I believe one of the attacks of last year was for example, and I don't. This is actually an interesting question. I believe the person who did the Orlando. There have been so many, but the Orlando killing last summer in the bar in Orlando, I believe he was he was natural born, and I assume they're including that, and they're calling that terrorism. And I've used that example to give you a counterpoint. The Las Vegas shooting, where 70 died, I believe, and over 500 were wounded. That was an American, and of course, no one's getting convicted. The guy killed himself or they killed him, so there's no conviction. But even if there was, they would not convict him on terror. They'd convict him on homicide, right?
Very likely.
So you're already talking about a skewed system here that's simply not going to give you real numbers. But even if you accepted these numbers, as I pointed out, it really just highlights how ridiculous the Trump proposals are. They don't address the very problems you say. The wall in particular is the one that jumped out at me when you're talking a little over 10% of the people that you detained traveling to the United States were entering by land.
Well, the wall
then what are we talking about?
Prevention was an afterthought. And I think it always was, even among people who advocated it for in Congress and elsewhere, long before Trump even ran for office on the idea. They all thought the idea was we want a wall to stop Latin American immigration. And if that isn't enough for you, or you feel like, gee whiz, that's racist, like you're a Republican senator from Arizona, say. And you're like, well, I can't be that racist because a lot of those folks have become American citizens, having immigrated legally, and they vote in my state, and so I'm not going to go along with that. Well, okay, how about this? Terrorists could be sneaking in across the border. Like, look, James O'Keefe put on a Osama bin Laden mask and walked around in the Rio Grande, so there you have it. And I guess that was excuse enough for people. And obviously, when you look at the numbers of it, well, duh. that's not real.
Yeah, no, and I see that. And I guess the thing that always gets me on the southern wall thing, and he tweeted about that again today, the great danger on the southern border.
Yes.
In terms of both drug trafficking and terrorism, I mean, unless we think these people are stupid, what's to stop them from coming in through the northern border if it's that porous?
Well, nothing.
Or do we have a big wall there that I don't know about?
We don't, and I think I think you'd be right in saying that more terrorism suspects and worse drugs, not more drugs, but worse drugs, come from the north, over the northern border. I think the border with Canada is probably, well, A, it's more porous. B, I know of at least, like there was the Los Angeles airport attack plot. The alleged terrorists were coming across from the Canadian border. Vermont and Maine, rural Maine, complain of gigantic opioid problems like many states around the country, but they come in from over the northern border very often. Nothing is done about that, as far as I can tell. They're only concerned about, the brown people border.
Yeah, and yes, and I think it's fairly obvious. I mean, so the idea that security is driving this, which is the line they're using this week, in addition with, Democrats don't want to fund the military on the shutdown.
Okay.
And I think you'll hear a lot of this now from Trump because I think at this point there will be a shutdown. I find it hard to fathom how there's not going to be one.
Yeah. Done by Friday.
Well, it's not. I mean, now that Trump's has dug in his heels, he's going to find out how a shutdown plays.
Yeah.
And
He's
remember,
always wanted it.
60 votes is good for the Senate on the budget or a CR. But if Trump decides he's not for it, then the number's 67.
Oh, yeah,
and
right.
290 in the House. I mean, you got to override his veto, which is not going to happen.
No,
so there will be in my view, there will be a shutdown. We should be prepared for that. And, I think, frankly, Democrats should be steeled for it. I don't know if you've talked about it, but Joe Scarborough, of all people, has said that this morning that Democrats would be craven and stupid to sign onto a CR that doesn't have DACA on it. He said it would be politically stupid and the wrong thing to do, just as a moral question.
Well, all right.
So there. I mean, that decides it, right? Doesn't Joe Scarborough decide the conventional wisdom in the morning, and everybody agrees after that?
I do all I can to avoid agreeing with him, but they would be, obviously. And it would be the wrong thing to do. The shutdown likely to happen, whether they eventually agree to sign on to such a thing or not, just because there isn't enough time to hammer anything out. And by the way, I think that means that would mean a government shutdown just in time for what's scheduled to be a second iteration of the Women's March, scheduled for the weekend.
Yes.
I don't know if it's going to be as big an event, but there'll be events around the country as well. So, by the way, if you were considering or would have considered participating in such an event and didn't make plans to come to D.C., just like the other one, there will be events everywhere, and you can check in on it online and find out whether there's one near you. I don't know whether that won't likely affect the police presence for it, but it would be really interesting. I wouldn't put it past Republicans. Once again, sending photographers out from the major newspapers to take pictures of any garbage cans that might have been carefully placed on their side in on pavement and lit on fire to show the mass chaos in Washington, D.C. But then for them to say, and it happened during a government shutdown when all our security personnel were laid off, which they wouldn't be during this situation. But we'll see. I anticipate the shutdown, and Trump has been itching for one since before he was elected. So
yeah, I think it was Mazie Hirono on this morning on CNN who said that Trump said what the country needs is a good shutdown.
Well, he's going to get a bad one, and I guess we'll see whether he can make more out of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting juxtaposition. How it plays, I think, is pretty clear. I think it's Trump shut down the government because he's a racist, I think, is a line that plays at this point.
Yeah. Well, they're going to have to try it. I mean, everyone is still talking about the S-hole countries thing, and the idea that, well, today's reporting from the Washington Post, I think makes it as clear as can be. They had a deal. He said, terrific, come to the White House and we'll discuss it. But in the interim, he was surrounded by, and ended up the last people who spoke to him were the arch conservatives. And by the time the deal makers got to the White House, these were no longer the droids he was looking for, and he was angry and furious with the people who wanted to compromise. This despite the televised interest in compromise 2 days before.
Uh-huh.
So, not surprising, and I guess we will have that shutdown. By the way, I did pick up this morning that, I guess this is actually from last Friday, that Jim Clyburn, the I think, third-ranking Democrat in the House. I just want you to know they're pursuing censure for Trump, in part over the S-hole countries, but probably about much, much more as well. That's good news. I'm glad they're putting something like that forward. They ought to. They're about to invite the man to address them in a joint session from the House chamber, and I think as a matter of the privileges of the House, they ought to say, he can still come here, but we have to put on record that he's under censure for his comments. Sure, he's the president. Sure, this is the State of the Union. He could submit it in writing, by the way. George Washington, I think, considered doing that. And
Geraldo said we're the Democrats who walk out are trampling on the Constitution.
Yes. All it says is that it shall be delivered from time to time. It doesn't necessarily have to be an annual event. With competent presidents, we want it year by year. And in the past, by the way, you don't have to come and deliver it in person. And frankly, everyone wishes he wouldn't. And so does Trump, to be honest. He'd much rather submit it in writing. It would be more coherent. But I think it's business that they need to take care of before he is invited to speak. And remember that formally speaking, that's what happens. The Congress has to pass a resolution inviting him to do this. And I wouldn't, I'd say before you get my consideration on this, as a matter of the privileges of the House, we're talking about a really sick racist here. He is president, allegedly, so we might have to allow this or might have to honor tradition, but I can't do it without going on record and saying he deserves censure. I don't think they'll get that vote anytime soon, but they're aiming for it. And they might want to use that privileged question as a lever for getting their vote soon.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, for those who are, I know you're in your last hours, but the Homeland Security Chief is in seconds is now testifying, I believe, before the House Judiciary Committee. I see Orrin Hatch on my television. I'm sure she's lying about something or other. So if you want to enjoy the prevarications of the Trump administration, they're on your TV in living color, as NBC
Secretary
used to
Nielsen.
You got Kristen Nielsen from Norway.
Yeah, I'm curious about whether she really is, in fact. I wouldn't be surprised if her family was from Norway. Could be from anywhere.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
It would be that. It would be funny if she were.
She is. That is a Scandinavian name, so
yes,
it's possible.
All right. Well, thanks, Armando.
Man.
Take care.
Thanks for letting me come in and talk about that Justice Department thing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That was a very important piece of the puzzle there. Thanks for doing it. All right, and to wrap up here for, let's see, one more thing I wanted to kind of shoehorn in. Maybe a longer discussion of it tomorrow, maybe not. It turns out that Wendy Dang Murdoch, apparently the subject of some interest of our counterintelligence community here, apparently at some point they briefed Ivanka and Jared that she was under some suspicion, maybe for being involved in spying activities, or at the very least advocating on behalf of perhaps the Chinese government for some of their spy-related activities, and they ought to be careful about their relationship with her, but of course that has meant to them vacationing regularly with her. I'm sure that will lead to nothing, no problems whatsoever. A lot of holes still in that story, but interesting to take note of. I'll share it with you. And now, time once again to hand the microphones over to Justice for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. What do we have today? Let's see, UK Labour Party leader Emily Thornberry says Trump is a dangerous man and an asteroid of awfulness. That's an interesting term. Then Walmart finally apologizes to a black Montana State University professor after ignoring a racist incident by an employee for over a year. There's much more to come here, too. Let's see what we can shoehorn in after this short message.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show.
With David Waldman.
Oh, yes, he's got Tucker Carlson insisting that immigrants have made California the poorest state in the nation, but with a surplus of over $10 billion, the state ranks as the sixth largest economy in the world. And Sweden is creating a new government agency to protect its upcoming election from Russian and other propaganda. Sounds like a smart move, that much and more next.